And so really is becoming like a team where you're calling on different experts on your team to give their expertise to a task. We're talking about bot families or bot teams that we create to do all kinds of different kinds of work. Some of you out there may be thinking, hey, I just learned how to create one bot. What are you talking about? Families of bots or teams of bots? Why would you even need such a thing? So maybe we'll just start with a little bit of background on maybe our own bot development, how we went from 1 to 4 to I've lost count at this point how many bots we have. So Dylan, what made you want to create more than one bot?
Yeah, I think you start to realize pretty quickly that the key is like going as detailed and niche as possible within each bot makes the output more appropriate. So, I think I started off with like my marketing buddy, it was like, because that's my department at work. And so I created just a marketing helper, well, that was kind of the idea. And I gave it some marketing principles or like gurus that I tend to like. And I would ask for information, and it did, it was definitely helpful. It helped to get me on the right track. But then I think I realized as soon as I start going deeper, it's sort of like a scope and depth type issue, where the deeper that you want to go on a specific topic or idea or a specific action, then you want to have, so you want depth, so you need less scope. I'm not sure if I'm using that word exactly right, but I want less breadth and I want more depth. So then I began creating more targeted GPTs suited for specific tasks. And then you can just see, you can tell how that would just expand and expand until you have, all these very specific GPTs that you turn to for very specific tasks.
Yeah. And even like our marketing personas, we have 24 different marketing personas that we use. And those became very niche and they spoke exactly like that persona. But then we saw a need to create sort of a few kind of manager bots that understood what was in each of those 24 that we could ask questions to as well. So you could say, hey, this situation came up. Which one of these personas would be most interested in this type of content or this type of offering? And the sort of manager bot was then able to know, okay, X, Y, and Z have these things in them. They like this kind of stuff, and was able to give us an answer. One of the other things that's really cool in ChatGPT, they had this, then they took it away, and now they brought it back, is in your chat, if you're interfacing with just the general chat or with one of your bots, you can bring in another bot by just simply typing in @ and the name of the bot. And so you could be working on it. So this is something I did this morning. I was writing a newsletter. And so I have a bot that helps me because it knows my voice. I've fed it with all kinds of information about what I'm looking for when I'm writing this kind of newsletter, style, substance, parameters, all that sort of stuff. But then I have sort of my target audience bot who knows my audience. And so I wrote a newsletter, I edited it, came back, still didn't feel quite right. And so I just typed in @ any, give me your feedback on this newsletter. What are the areas you'd improve it? And then that bot gave me feedback based on their perspective. And so this really is becoming like a team where you're calling on different experts on your team to give their expertise to a task. instead of leaning on just the general GPT LLM to give you all of that, feedback. It really is like having an orchestra, and you're able to call on the bassoons or call on the
Hmm.
harps or call on the whatevers. I don't play an instrument, so I don't know, but you get the idea. Is like you can
I've heard
call
you
on
playing the
these,
bassoon late at night.
yeah, and my xylophone.
The bassoon is actually a really beautiful instrument. It just sounds funny to say. Yeah.
So anyway, that's really the sort of nub of the idea is like bots
Yeah.
perform better when they're very specific, but then you lose, like you're talking about, that breadth when they're very specific. And so
Hmm.
that's where you either need to call on several of them or have these kind of manager bots that can help you interface with their expertise.
So, where would you advise our listeners to begin with that process? Do they begin at the
Mm.
very specific level, or do you think they should begin with more general help?
Yeah, I mean, I think in our course, we teach how to begin to build a custom GPT. And I think part of our advice is think of a specific use case to start with that
Yeah.
custom GPT. That's always the best place. Like, I want it to help me write. I want it to help me with some marketing. I want it to embody this data set of information, whatever it is. You start with that use case, and then you kind of can build from there. And so, like,
Yeah.
if you're, like I gave you the illustration for me, like I started with my bot writer, and then I realized I need to ask other questions when I'm like needing input. And so I also have like a personal coach bot where I've uploaded all of my own personality tests, inventories, all of that kind of stuff. And I'll ask it how I would read these, some of my own writing, which is getting kind of meta, but it it does it quicker than I would do it, and then I can react to its analysis. So anyway, but your original question was just start with a specific use case, and then
Mhm.
you'll begin to see the limits
Right.
of where you're getting good information or not, and then that might be the case for then building the next in your bot team.
Yeah, it's like you want to start with something that you're reasonably good at already that
Hmm. Right.
but hey, how could I be a little bit better at this? So like I'm a good writer. A writing bot is helpful for me because I can make improvements, but I'm not leaning on it 100% because I already know
Yeah.
how to write. So um yeah, and then it's like you said, you can then you can verify how it's behaving because you have like if I had a math bot, it could be just totally full of crap and I would have no idea. I would just have no clue. Like this is great until I ran up against something in the real world. Uh, so yeah, you can
But
start with
I mean, I do that. I have sort of a math and graphing bot that I use a lot because it's like I know enough to be dangerous. And so I'm like,
yeah,
I know I need a regression analysis to predict the future of this
right,
trend. But I don't know anymore how to calculate a regression analysis. And so just to make sure it's not giving me something to, I'll say, what is the formula for regression analysis
hmm
or growth prediction over the next few months with these variables? And it'll give me the formula. And then I can just say, okay, then execute this formula with this data set.
yeah. And it's probably like I think you can be reasonably confident it can do math pretty well, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
much
sure.
better
So
than me.
yeah, totally. Um, but beginning with something that you have some knowledge and expertise in is good because then you can verify. Like is kind of what we're saying. You can verify the output, and like you said,
Yeah.
you can see the limitations. Or conversely, what I found too is like it's more than just seeing the limitations. It's like you all of a sudden start to see, oh my gosh, what if I combined like the expertise of this bot with the
Mhm.
expertise of this bot, or like ask this one about the thing that this other one usually does. And
Right.
you can start to see how you can really creatively like expand your sense of expand your sense of what is possible.
Yeah. And also, there's a whole world of bots out there that have been created by other people.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to create your own custom GPT. In OpenAI interface for ChatGPT, there is a link that says explore GPTs. And so when you click that link, it opens up to something that's almost like an app store
Yeah.
for GPTs. And so you can go and find a GPT that is an expert in something that you're curious about. For example, if you wanted to take the Enneagram, or if you had questions about Roman history of the, Republic era or whatever, you could find a custom GPT that is purporting to be an expert in that area. Again, you have to take a little grain of salt. There may or may not be total expertise, but it's probably in an arcane area of knowledge, something more than yours.
Mm-hmm.
And you can start playing around with that custom GPT to see how good it is. And so if it's a math function or some history issue or whatever it is, you can explore pre-existing GPTs and get a little more expertise about them before you maybe go and recreate and
Right.
create your own to get started.
And I think they have users can rate them, so that's maybe a pretty good proxy for how effective it is if there's like a lot of good ratings on it.
Yeah, and same with like an app that you might be going to buy. Check the ratings, see how many people are downloading or using it. Generally, the more people are using it and giving it good ratings, the more accurate it's going to be.
Yeah, and if nothing else, it will just give you some inspiration too for like types of GPTs that you could create. And maybe this would be a resource that would be helpful for us to produce, Sam, is like just a running list of concepts for GPTs, that maybe we can put on our website so you guys can, our listeners can go to our website and check that out. We'll put that up. But yeah, I think I found on the Explore GPTs page like a product roadmap GPT that was very highly rated, and I think somebody talked about it too on LinkedIn. Perhaps, I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly why I found it, but it was really super helpful. And so like I put in it basically like you just tell it like you're an idea for a project or whatever, and it kind of used these like best practices and principles for agile development of a product or whatever, and it kind of spits out this roadmap of what happens first, what happens next, based on a general sense of what you had in your idea. And so that was really helpful for a few of the things that we were working on as a team. Like, okay, I know that we have this project. I know that we have this like end goal, like a end result that we want to achieve. But how do we get from A to that from nothing? And that was super helpful.
Yeah, I mean, also there are like if you're using a web application of any sort, there's going to be a custom GPT out there for basically the training manual on that thing. So Asana, there's a whole bunch of GPTs that are based on Asana. And if you have custom questions about Asana, you can use you could ask general GPT as well, but sometimes you want to have more arcane little insider tricks and tips. You can find it like an Asana GPT and ask it questions.
Great point.
This sort of sparks one of my observations of how this is evolving is I kind of think, and I'm going to say this a little more boldly than it probably will actually be, but I don't really think there's going to be websites. There's just going to be GPTs. The way that we interface with information now is we go to this website that then we search for the information. And sort of the advance is when those websites have custom GPTs associated with it that then help us to find the information we're looking for. I think that the next step after that is just going to be, I want to go to Microsoft or to Asana or whatever. I'm just going to call on the official Asana bot, or my personal assistant bot is going to go interface with the Asana bot and bring back the information that I need. And so I kind of think that's the play that a lot of LLMs and AI companies are making at the moment, is kind of the future of information technology.
And I can already feel it pull. I totally agree, Sam. I can already feel it sort of pulling in that direction. Like I've had a few experiences of going to a website, and if I see the little intercom bubble on the bottom,
Yeah.
intercom is like a customer support sort of like chat featured thing. It's more than that, but like, but if I see that down there and I know like, okay, I don't want to go like browse through the pages of the help page on the thing and
Right.
or search a search term in the search bar. Like I know now that I'm gonna have pretty good success probably with the AI agent that's there on the little chat thing.
Yeah.
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 And so I'll skip all of the beautiful, UI on the page and just go right down to the little beep and say, can you answer this question? And that's before like you're saying, why do I even need to type in the website of this place to go and get information when instead the information can be brought to me?
Yeah, a lot of things are changing. I think it is one of these pivotal moments where we have been so word based for the past 500 years with the invent of the printing press and sort of a publishing industry built around words. And even our interfaces, like through typewriters and even keyboards, has been word based, written word based. And now it's almost like a pre-modern era where the word spoken becomes more prominent than the word written. And in a lot of ways, it's almost like a digital oral culture that we're moving forward to, or back into. I don't know.
Into, bust out the campfire and the cave paintings. And, yeah. No, I think that there's something really interesting there. And I think parallel with that is moving away from some of the image obsession that we've had in the design obsession. And you could sort of set your product apart by the fancy trappings around it, like on the on a website or in promotional materials or something. But it's like we might be getting down to the real meat and potatoes of what your product is selling.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if you've been following this, but there's been a big brouhaha around Jaguar or Jaguar rebranding.
No, we fought a war, Sam, to not have to say Jaguar.
It's more fun to say Jaguar, but Jaguar, the car, just went rebranded to a very generic looking typeface. And almost all the major brands have very boring typefaces at the moment.
Blanding, they call it. Yeah.
Yes. And so the question has been like, what is behind this? And I think what you just said is kind of part of that. It's not the visual interpretation of the brand that's as important in a logo or in a, typeface as it was in sort of the early era of the internet. Now there's something more. The brand is embedded somewhere else.
Interesting.
And so I
Yeah.
think it's getting to this more like we've also talked one-on-one about the vibe culture. Like it's not so much the fact, but the vibe that's important. The vibe is like a microcosm of the brand. And so if you can connect to the right vibe, you're communicating what your brand values are. And
Hmm.
so it's just interesting that, a logo or a typeface logo is not where the brand vibe exists.
Hmm.
Because why? Well, I think it's both this oral culture and also this visual culture that's kind of merging in a interesting way these days.
Yeah, and it's almost like your brand has to have it has to have an ethos
Hmm.
that speaks into everything that it does. And so it's a showing and not telling, and
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's like, what do you stand for, maybe, or something like that. What's your worldview? Maybe those types of questions are going to become important.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to get political here, but I think even this is happening in our political discourse that we used to have this political discourse that was basically very factual, like
Mm,
my set of facts, your set of facts, let's duke it out over these set of facts.
yeah.
And now we sort of have our political and social and cultural discourses around vibes,
Hmm.
um, these feelings and emotions, ethos of things that don't necessarily all cohere exactly
Hmm.
logically, but they comprise sort of a composite vibe.
I think partly that must have something to do with our suspicion of information,
Mm,
and moving away from the supremacy of information.
right.
And so it's like, if that foundation, like you said, you could used to be able to maybe debate facts, but now whose facts and where the facts come from, and everyone has their own information sources, and so it's much harder to do so when you don't have agreement on the base set of facts, or even moral principles or whatever. And so
Yeah.
if that's the case, then having dueling uh dueling, like, political brand identities, or like cultural, all the cultural signifiers are so
Hmm.
important, and those types of things. That's where the real, like, in the United States, that's where a lot of the political conflict comes down to, is like, what kind of person are you, you know yeah. And
Yeah. I
that's
mean,
tricky.
we're going a little far afield of AI, but I do think it circles back here in the sense
Yeah.
that if we are returning to more oral culture where this word spoken and the images associated with the speaking of those words have more value than the sort of logical.
Yeah.
I think there is the ancient Greeks had this threefold mechanism for persuasion called logos, ethos, and pathos.
Mm,
And so to be a good rhetorician, you had to embody all three of those. So logos, logic. So logic doesn't disappear, it just gets sort of repositioned as the supreme
yeah.
down to more one of three. And then there's the pathos, which is the emotional feel of something, which is getting into the how do the images make me vibe.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's also the logos, pathos, ethos, which is the ethics or uh, the truthfulness, meaning the ethical implications of this thing.
Yeah.
And so when you get those three lined up, that's where the Greeks would say that was persuasive communication. And since we're coming from a marketing perspective on AI, it's just interesting to think about even building AI agents or bots that embody not just logic, they're not just Mr. Spocks, but
Great
even in
point.
the bots we've built, I think we've consciously set ethical limits on those bots. And we've also given them pathos or personalities that resonate as a real human as much as we can. And
Yep.
this is kind of a debate about, do we interface with these things as humanish or not humanish? And I think I'm on the side of the more humanish they feel, the more effective they actually are.
Yeah. I think that's probably right. I think it's just the growing pains of getting from here to there is what is funny. A couple of weeks ago, we had the episode about AI ads.
Yeah.
And so if listeners, if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to it, because it was a lot of fun. And, since then I keep seeing more and more as well. And I'm almost like, I wish we had waited because I have more examples now, but
of how terrible they are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and there was one that speaks to what you're just talking about, this human element, because it was for, no, I can't remember which one it was for, but it was, like they're pitching it as this digital assistant, but the whole vibe was people just chatting with it like a friend,
Right.
And there was something that was just incredibly sad,
Mm.
to be honest, about it. And it was like, I'm glad that people have somebody to talk to, but man, there's something not right there. And I just thought it was so funny. So, and that was, but the whole, the selling point was like, you can talk to it just like you can to a friend. I had a very human, they were just like talking, and Simone Biles is there, and she's like, laying on her bed in her hotel room, talking about like a dream that she had about her hands turning to spaghetti. And it was funny, but but it was like, Simone Biles probably has so many people that want to be her friend, like, I don't know, but so that is the it maybe not a downside, but it's something to watch out for.
Yeah, I think the interface is going to be more conversational.
Yeah.
It's going to be like this. You're going to be sitting here talking to an agent or a website or, Microsoft or Apple or whatever. And the advantages of that are like, you're going to be able to say, like, here's my problem with your product.
Right.
Can you fix this? Instead of like getting frustrated with somebody halfway across the world who it's not their fault. They don't understand, and you'll be able to like, hopefully get resolution to those kinds of problems quicker. But the like you're saying, the disconnect is going to be, the interface is more human, but it's not a human interface. It's not a person. And so how do we develop the skills as, digital natives now with understanding, oh, I'm talking to this like a human, but it's not a human.
Yeah.
Like we talk about communing with dead authors when we read their works, but we know that's a joke. We're not really.
Yeah.
But I could create a bot of Charles Dickens and actually talk with it and learn an awful lot about Charles Dickens.
Yeah.
But I'm not necromancing. I'm not raising the dead. And so that's a future skill to develop, of like, what's a human to human and what's a human to humanish agent conversation look like.
I'm just reminded, I told my wife she was asking me something, and I was like, this is a perfect example for Chat GPT. See if I can remember, but I can't quite remember. But she had a photo of something, and she was like, what does this mean? And I was like, yeah, put that in Chat GPT. She did it, and it like gave it such a great answer. And she was like, I almost just said thank you, but I'm not doing that crap, something like that. It was so funny. And so I was like, you should say thank you, but we were laughing about that, that made me think too. That's a great like biography subjects of biographies would be a great use case for
Yeah.
GPTs, because you can be like, ask John Adams, like, when you wrote this letter to Abigail, what was going on again, or
Right.
whatever, and that could really make biographies come alive in a cool way.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is circling back to the idea, like, the way we interface with information is going to be more humanish, more
Humane,
personified.
almost. Yeah.
Hopefully. I mean, the same problems will exist because whoever's building that John Adams GPT can slip in all kinds of their own bias or false narratives or false chronologies, intentionally and unintentionally. Just like now, somebody who writes a biography. And so sussing out what is the truth of that is going to be kind of complicated, but kind of no more so than watching a docu-series on the life of John Adams.
Oh yeah. I mean, documentaries, you cannot trust documentaries at all. I mean, because like that, they're like all pathos. So yeah. That makes that does make it interesting to think about, and then how to position your brand or your firm or whatever. This is AI for good. So it's like, we're coming from the place of, how can we believe in what we're doing at our nonprofit, so how can we set it up to thrive in the coming environment? So do you have any other, like, based on some of these questions that we're asking, like, what does that mean for us as a nonprofit, and how can people apply that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it means that you're using these technologies to increase your scope or scale, but you're not using these technologies to replace genuine human interaction. So, I mean, one of our driving principles is, how can we help a lot of people, but to the people, especially who want and need one-on-one human to human interaction, how can we be more available to them in a way we weren't previously?
Right. Yeah. So you can sort of have a larger top of funnel because of the scalability of the technology, where you can reach people at that level a little bit easier. And then as people then filter through and you find your most like key customers,
Right.
Or then vice versa too, like if you're talking about your donor base, you can do things that can reach out to a larger pool of people who might be possible funders, freeing up those resources for the really like high touch, one-on-one personal connections.